Hello and welcome to the Labor John podcast, where we cordially coexist with the working class history of Philadelphia and the surrounding world. My name is Young Sam James. I'm the coagulating co-host, and my codependent is...
I'm Gabe Christie, we are also joined today by Mika and Will from the Mariposa Food Cooperative.
Off to a great start, Gabe.
Yep, I'm a professional.
I give you a lot of hints with all these co's, you know.
Well, I knew that part. Anyway, Mika and Will, would you like to introduce yourselves?
My name is Mika. I use they, them pronouns. I am a produce stocker and a union steward at Mariposa. And I was involved a bit for the tail end of contract negotiations, which ended about a year ago for our union. And I've been involved since in organizing responses to management retaliation to our union.
And my name's William Inglis. I'm also a shop steward at Mariposa Food Co-Op through our representation with UFCW Local 1776 KS. I was on the organizing committee, the negotiation committee, and currently on the labor management committee for our union at the co-op.
So I guess we should start with a little bit of background. So how long have you each worked at Mariposa, and what attracted you to working there, aside from just needing money to survive?
I mean, that's really more or less it. Like, I was out of work at the time, and I lived just a couple blocks from the co-op. I'd never seen people working all that hard there. It seemed like a pretty laid-back place to work. So I started on the night shift there in 2019, and been riding out the pandemic there ever since.
Yeah. My pandemic unemployment was running out, and I wanted somewhere local to work, somewhere that was trans friendly to work. And, I have experience in like the garden sphere. So I just thought produce just made sense to apply there. I'd shopped there for years. I've lived in the neighborhood for a while. So just made sense.
Cool.
I've worked there for about a year and a half.
Okay. And what have your experiences there been?
I mean, as far as what kicked off our drive, there's always been like an undercurrent of, I'd say, like a culture of bullying and like blame shifting from management. So that was pretty evident shortly after I started there. But I was on the night shift, so I was able to ignore most of it. And there didn't really seem to be much of a catalyst to organize there at the time. Coincidentally, the person who hired me there later told me that they hired me because it seemed like I could help organize the place, organize the staff there in my interview.
Really?
So after lockdown started, they had what sounded like a good plan for taking care of us, watching out for our health with COVID. They split us into like quarantined teams from each other, so different shifts didn't overlap. It seemed like a really good plan, but then as soon as people started getting sick, everything they said went out the window.
Oh yeah.
We were told that if somebody on a shift got sick, that everybody working that shift would be sent home until they could safely test negative and come back. That didn't happen. The first person who got COVID there was sent home, and everybody who worked with him was told to get back to work.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Did they promise you to send you home with pay?
So
originally,
well, because of the government COVID, PTO at the time, they didn't have to.
Oh, okay.
If we remember way back when the pandemic started,
the dark times, we try to forget about that.
Yeah. We had that. They had that program that you could get, I believe it was 80 hours of, maybe it was either 80 or 40 hours of government paid time off for a COVID related time off work. And so they didn't have it was, they didn't really have to worry about putting up any extra money for it at the time. Right. So yeah, the people did go home paid. They also would let us borrow against future PTO. So the money part of it didn't seem like the biggest deal at the time. What did was the callous attitude towards our health once people did start getting sick. And there's been a few waves of COVID that have ripped through the place. And every time it's happened, we've kind of just been pushed back to work as quickly as, people in other jobs.
Yeah.
But the co-op has a reputation as being a better employer. So.
Yeah, it's strange to hear that. It's not the kind of look they usually give. They have a good PR.
Right. So that was our catalyst for organizing was, I mean, it happened like right then. As soon as the first person got sick and his entire shift didn't go home, we organized our union immediately and had a very short organizing drive.
And what was management's response to the organizing?
So they voluntarily recognized us as soon as we had card check. But our card check, and I don't believe they actually know the numbers on it, and I'm not going to share the exact numbers, but our card check was overwhelming to the point where if they had called for an election to recognize our union, I mean, it would have damaged their standing in the community to not recognize us. And also, it was such an overwhelming card check that they really didn't have a choice in the matter.
How many people approximately work there?
In our bargaining unit, currently, I believe there's 21 with maybe one or two probationary staff. And there's another about 10 administrative staff that are non-union. So it's currently around 30. I believe it was closer to 40 at the time where we organized.
Well, that's pretty amazing, the turnaround of you guys doing the unionizing of all that. Because I worked at Target. I was in the grocery department during COVID. And it's like this. I feel like I'm getting bad flashbacks. And I'm going to continue to get bad flashbacks the longer you guys talk, because it's pretty much the same instance, except we didn't really have that kind of a union mindset. So it's amazing to hear this. It's refreshing.
And it's a big credit to our coworkers. Like, our coworkers seem to get it when we talk to them that we were going to have to take a stand against what was, abusive and unsafe behavior on the part of management. It didn't take a whole lot of push to get everybody on board. So, and I've never felt more solidarity at a workplace than I do at Mariposa.
Yeah, same. I think a lot of people there are like down to collectively stand up for ourselves and kind of like recognize that like the place has a legacy as a community co-op, and like that's what it's supposed to be. And I think that I also think there's a sense, like, after going through the pandemic, that like, the bosses and the powers that be don't, I think we all recognize more that they don't have our interests at heart, and that we need to have a say in our own fates, and that we have a responsibility for organizing to make sure that we do.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to say and use PR and say, we're going to send these people home and all that. But once it actually happens and they start saying, nah, you guys actually come back to work. And that's a whole different story.
And at this point, like with our coworkers and the sense of solidarity we have with them, we've all been through some shit together at this point. Like we've gone through a pandemic that, nobody, the likes of that nobody has seen, who's still alive, really. So, there's a lot of, it's like, it is like our coworkers, we hold the place together as a business, and we hold each other together as a union. And we're in the process of standing up to management in what I consider a backlash phase that we're in currently.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't. It does show the solidarity because it seems like you guys were all just forged in the fire here.
I mean, we did. So our contract negotiations took close to a year, which we were not expecting. As you know, they presented themselves as friendly to the prospect of negotiating with the union, but when it came down to it, they pushed back just as hard as a lot of very unfriendly employers would. And the things that they were pushing back against, mostly like wages and benefits, took almost no time at all to negotiate. We all kind of knew where we were going with that. But workplace safety rules, workplace democracy stuff, that's what they fought against for close to a year. And
you mean the co-op part of co-op?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that leads into my next question, which for folks that are unfamiliar with kind of consumer co-ops, it might be a little bit of a strange question. But can you explain who management is in this situation? Like what
There's
what
a board
kind of
that
constitutes
oversees,
the management level
co-op,
there?
And sorry.
Oh no, you're fine.
There's a board that oversees the co-op, and they have oversight over a general manager of the store. I think the position has changed names to CEO now, Cooperative Executive Officer.
Damn.
So it's not that many people. I mean, it's sort of like one of those things where in another situation, like a big company, like you have like a lot of like faceless executives and faceless investors and like that kind of thing. Like here, like, we know a lot of these board members. We know the general manager. We see them every day at work. And like, so it's kind of a situation where it's like, this tension is palpable because of like how localized it all is.
Yeah.
And the co-op itself is owned by approximately, I think it's 3,700 members of the community who pay a patronage fee to be part of the co-op. And they elect a board, which I believe has 12 members. And those people govern the co-op and have turned management over to one person who is the CEO of the store, the one store, and that person has unlimited authority on how to manage the place within these guidelines that are set up by the board. So all operations, everything is decided by one person on behalf of 3,700 members of this community.
Which a lot of our staff are also member owners too, is another thing, including me.
And me.
And so we feel, that one executive officer isn't really, yes, it is a consumer co-op, but also that, one executive, I think there used to be a more, Will, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there was a collective management structure there before
right.
The current general manager came in. And I know there was probably issues with that and power struggles. Like I know that workplace democracy, just like any democracy, probably has its power struggles and drama, but I still find that a better way of running things than a single person rule.
Agreed.
And just like a little bit on consumer co-ops in general, for anybody who's unfamiliar with the concept, Mariposa Co-op started as essentially a buyer's club in the 1970s. It was run out of a house that was called the Mariposa House, which is why it's called Mariposa Co-op to this day, of people in West Philadelphia who wanted access to healthy organic food and wanted to be able to buy it in bulk to share among members of the co-op. And it expanded several times. In the early, I believe around 2000, it moved to what's now VN10 Cafe on Baltimore Avenue. And then I think it was 2012, it moved to the current location in the old Belmont Trust Bank on Baltimore Avenue and open to the public. So it is still a member-owned cooperative, but the general public can shop there now. And there are benefits that go to members, like refunds on any profits the place makes, discounts, things like that. So that's the basic cons. So it's not a worker-run cooperative, which a lot of people do confuse consumer co-ops with. We are not a worker-run cooperative, even though workers are allowed to become members, which a lot of us are. But it is owned by what are essentially shareholders as members of the co-op who've paid $200 or whatever it is to become members.
Has there been any, like, I guess the best way to explain it would be any like class distinctions developing between especially the board and membership? Like, are there kind of, I know at least within, because I come from the museum background, and there tends to be a very specific group of people who might come up from being volunteers or active at whatever museum or historic site, but then the same like 12 people just continue to be reelected to board positions for 20 some odd years.
I don't think anybody on the board currently has been there that long. I think most of the people have been there 2 or 3 terms at most. There was a lot of turnover on the board during the transition from a private co-op where only members could shop to one open to the general public. And I don't know, but I don't know of anybody who's still on the board from that time.
There's not. I recently heard that even the most recent board members have only been there for like 3 years. So yeah, it's all pretty new.
Okay.
But there's a sense that there's a lot of that a lot of the people who are more active before have kind of dropped off, and just like membership in general have kind of let the place go to be run by the current board and CEO that don't necessarily have the co-op's original interest in heart.
Mm-hmm.
As and it seems to be run as more of a I say like a mini Whole Foods sometimes, and it's not like that extreme, but there's a sense that they told us over and over again in negotiations, or their fucking lawyer would tell us over and over again, oh, this is a different sort of employer. We're not like against the workers the way if you were to try and organize a Whole Foods would be.
Mm-hmm. We're a family here.
Well, we don't get the "we're a family" line, but we get we all kind of want the same thing, which we don't.
Yeah,
frankly.
Yeah, honestly, like I think I know there's a larger national organization of co-ops that we are a part of. And that has certain standards and buys certain products and buys from certain vendors. And that can feel like a chain. Like I've had people say like, oh, like I've been to a co-op in insert city here, and it felt just like your co-op. Like, why is that? Like, are you part of a chain?
Right. That's the National Co-op Grocers Association or Alliance. I think it's just National Co-op Grocers now. There's an entire ecosystem of consumer co-ops, particularly grocery stores, that fall under this umbrella of NCG, which provides consultants on how to run the board. A lot of the bylaws. So I've spoken with some people who were on the board prior to them joining NCG back when it's the old co-op. A lot of these bylaws that are in the co-op's constitution, or whatever you call it now, were developed by NCG as ways of consolidating power within co-ops to make them more profit-driven rather than community-driven, in my opinion. For example, there is a one voice policy where members of the board are not allowed to publicly dissent with decisions of the board and can be banned from serving on the board if they publicly dissent from decisions made by the majority. Or by, I think it's a 2/3 is what they have to have for anything to pass. But
So
that sort of thing, like the Supreme Court has public dissent allowed, and as far as and so this this is an organization that claims to be democratically run, and they're they have rules that would make the United States Supreme Court blush.
Yeah. So they just instituted democratic centralism is what it sounds like.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's not, before, I started working there after Will did. I started working there in, what year is it now? It's
23 now.
Yeah, it's like
no
summer 21. But there wasn't really any like workplace democracy until, our union contract kicked in and we, began our labor management committee and, got to have stewards and disciplinary meetings and all of that sort of thing. Like there wasn't, I understand that in previous iterations of the co-op, there was a level of workplace democracy where staff got to vote on stuff like attendance policies, which I would love to bring shit like that back, stuff like that back. Sorry if that's.
Oh no.
I already said fuck. I think it's okay.
Oh, okay.
You said fucking lawyers, which I appreciate.
Yeah, fucking
lawyers should always be prefaced by the word fucking.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I guess you never know. But anyways, yeah, it would be great to bring that kind of shit back. But yeah, it wasn't like it, to me it feels like the union is a way to bring democracy back to this co-op.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we intend to do. That's our plan, basically.
Yeah.
So the board is if you're a member of the co-op, you can run for the board. And a lot of us who are in the union and people who are sympathetic to the union who currently don't have a voice at all on the board, we're going to be running for the board because, and like our project here long term. All right, so like our short-term project, yes, was to get people a raise. There hadn't been a cost of living adjustment there since I believe 2017. When I started there and when our contract was signed, starting wage was still $13 an hour, which is not something you can live off of in Philadelphia these days.
Well, nothing has changed since 2017 or anything like that.
Right,
No.
exactly.
No.
And we got it bumped up to 15 an hour, which is not great. And I think the fight for 15 is 11, 12 years old at this point.
Oh, yeah.
So it's no longer a livable wage, but we had to get something for people. But we also have cost of living adjustments built in now. They used to have these stupid performance-based evaluations where you'd get a raise based on, like how well you danced for management or whatever. and we got rid of that. And we got rid of a lot of things like favoritism issues, people who were more in favor with management getting plumber positions. It's all seniority based now. So we got a lot of really good things out of our contract. There's a lot of shit in our contract too that we intend to get rid of in the future, like not being able to strike while we're under contract, not being able to picket, things that are found in most modern union contracts. Yeah, that are handicapping to us that we intend to get rid of in future contracts. But also as part of our long-term project with this is we want to radically reimagine what the workplace can be.
Absolutely.
And we feel that a consumer-owned cooperative that provides an essential service in a very progressive part of West Philadelphia that serves a public that holds the same values that many of us do, that this is the place to do that. So that is our long-term project here, is to make this the kind of workplace that we want to see in the world.
Mhm.
You could actually have the dignity of going to work and feeling like you have a say over your environment, and you have a say over things like your security and your compensation and like your working hours and all of that kind of, just basic human dignity, where you don't feel like you're under the heel of someone's boot. You know what I mean?
Imagine that.
Oh,
Yeah,
we do.
I know. Radical, right?
But if there's any place in the world where we can actually get this done, I believe that Mariposa Food Co-op in West Philly is the place where we can do that.
Yeah.
A place, like there's other places too, but this is a place where we can actually start to work on this for the long term. Like a workplace where, for example, management isn't timing how long you take to take a shit
Right.
on your break, as our management did a couple months ago, and I had to sit in on a meeting where they talked
Literally.
about somebody spending 20 minutes in the bathroom.
The meeting was in the bathroom, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, we believe that we can work as an example to the rest of the community for what a workplace can be. Some place where, like, if somebody is depressed and just can't make it to work that day because of like a mental health crisis, that you can do that without fear of retaliation, which
Right.
a lot of
Don't get
people,
punished.
right. It's like a lot of us currently feel like we have to like push ourselves to work under like, really miserable conditions just because.
Or like if your mom is sick, like you could stay home and take care of her and not have to face a disciplinary meeting after coming back to work after something like that.
Jesus.
Yeah.
It's
And-
one of those things, I mean, like we know and have experienced that like absences are inconveniences, but no one deserves to have their livelihood stripped away just from inconveniencing somebody else, like temporarily.
Yeah. For a
And-
job. Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially with what little COVID benefits we still have getting stripped away, I think, in May of 23 now.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
So-
Biden says, get your ass back to work.
Yep.
Yeah, and get your ass off Medicaid and a lot of other
Right.
things, which
Yeah.
is
And that's actually a thing that we're going to be dealing with soon, because a lot of our coworkers qualify for public benefits.
yeah.
And there's been that whole, since the pandemic started, there's been that whole gray area where like a lot of like the vast majority of the people I work with now did start during the pandemic. So a lot of them are carrying over their Medicaid. And honestly, a lot of them still make enough money still make little enough money to qualify for it.
Mhm.
Especially after the labor cuts that we faced right before Christmas. So that's something we're going to have to navigate over the next, I guess, 6 months. I don't know, 4 months. We get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, and
Yeah.
4 months is the end of the contract.
No, into 4 months until Biden kicks everyone off their off their Medicaid.
Off their
Because that's like because Medicaid, they haven't been throwing anybody off of it since the pandemic started. But once the public health emergency is declared over, you got 45 days to figure out your insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did have one question because I noticed there's already a staff delegate on the board. And
Oh, mod on.
I take it from your response that they do not sufficiently represent the staff.
So I don't know. I don't know how old. Like I grew up in the 80s and 90s when like the Gulf War, when like they'd say like, oh, Saddam Hussein won re-election with 99% of the vote, and it's like, oh, how'd that happen? It was. I'm not going to say a rigged election. But I will say that some of the people I spoke with at the time felt like they shouldn't run for staff delegate because of the person who is serving as our staff delegate currently, who told us that we were, was it whining about a wage theft? I asked for a wage theft investigation, and which they eventually paid us the back wages they owed us. But I was told that I was whining by our staff delegate.
Oh, okay.
So,
And they've had a bunch of just issues with various staff members, like, and I don't know much, I haven't personally interacted much with this person, but they have behaved in a way that suggests that they don't think much of the staff, much of the floor staff. They, picture, this co-op is in an old bank, and there is a downstairs area and an upstairs area. And the upstairs employees are all the admin staff. So this person is one of the upstairs employees, and they are closer to the general manager and
CEO.
the CEO. Excuse me. And they seem to, they do seem to look down on the floor staff, like the people in our union, and they have had issues with them. So getting a new staff rep on the board who actually represents the majority of staff would be key, and that is something that we intend to do soon. Because as Will said, we do hope to get a lot more representation on the board, and hopefully get a new management structure for the co-op as a whole. Honestly,
yeah, that's part of our medium-term project is getting a new management structure at the co-op, because the current one, it is a board CEO structure that is favored by for-profit corporations, the kind of corporations that Mariposa is supposed to provide an alternative to. And I do believe really strongly that Mariposa can provide an alternative to a lot of the, cutthroat capitalism that's out there. Not that I don't believe that consumer co-ops can be like our savior from capitalism.
sure,
But I believe that it can at least provide an alternative in, a small scale, something for people who don't want to participate in the most vile, reprehensible aspects of, imperialist capitalism that we live under.
and why not try to improve where you're at? What's in your backyard, where you find yourself at a given moment? I think the guy who organized one of the Amazon warehouses, Chris Smalls, said something like, don't quit your shitty job, organize it, because there's the same fire everywhere. And I think that kind of applies to this situation, in that the same fire is everywhere. And we also have a unique opportunity in this situation with a neighborhood co-op in a very progressive area to really see if we can make it into something that's like, a more humane workplace.
Some place where they aren't timing people on the toilet like they do at Amazon.
It's still going to be capitalistic, and I'm not naive. Like, I know that even a collective management structure will have its problems and its power struggles, but thinking about what can be better and going towards that, growing towards some kind of light, I think is definitely a move and definitely worth fighting for.
And I mean, just from the community side, most people tend to, how to explain it? I'm sure most people would appreciate going to shop at a place where the staff isn't just miserable and clearly extremely exploited all the time.
Well, it's part 100%. Of the thing. It's like, yes, very much so. To the point where, when we were in our negotiation phase of our contract, after we were recognized, we were in negotiations, and we would speak to members of the community. They all thought we were making a lot more money than we were. Nobody, we would poll members and speak with supportive members, and they all thought we were making at least $3-4 an hour more than we were. They thought that our health benefits were 100% paid for, that sort of thing.
So far from the truth.
Right. It was one of those things where they presented a face to the public and to the co-op's membership that they never, and I'm not going to say they ever said that they were doing better by us than they are, but there was definitely an insinuation that this place took care of people better than Target does, even though I believe Target has a higher starting wage than we do currently.
Target does, yeah. Also, they aesthetically implied it, even if they didn't say it.
Right. Yeah. So our contract is a good starting spot, and our local does a lot to provide support for us when people, before our contract, you could just be fired for, whatever, because it's an at-will state. Now we at least have something to say about it, and we can negotiate people's discipline, which I spend way too much fucking time in disciplinary meetings.
Tell me about it.
Holy shit. So Micah and I are the shop stewards there. So Micah and I sit in on all disciplinary hearings that are beneath termination level, where our union would send in a representative for. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you how many fucking hours I've spent discussing things like how long people take in the bathroom, how long people sit and stare at their phone between tasks.
Did you give me attitude? Things that kind of boil down to day-to-day annoyances and personality differences. A lot of, not that there are never any real things, but a lot of it is so unnecessary, and it's so much more than any place that I've ever worked in. Damn. Mm-hmm. Before our contract was in force, I would frequently get emails about the latest firing that happened, because they send out emails every time someone gets fired. And those have markedly decreased this past year, because they can't just fire people with impunity or due to favoritism, which is something that they still love to do when they can with managerial staff and admin staff. But the contract really has protected folks' job security. But they still have one, the one thing that they have had up their sleeve is the ability to cut hours. And, Will's right. Our local has been really supportive around a lot of stuff, but our contract doesn't forbid their ability to cut hours. And that's something that Will said this earlier, right before Christmas. We had a huge round of hour cuts, and a lot of folks there are either looking for a second job, looking for another job, or looking to leave. I probably got to get my ass on partial unemployment, frankly. But that's kind of been a big, ever since our wages went up, it seemed like they've been looking for ways to cut into that. And
oh yeah,
now it's a situation where the store, did have apparently had a pretty rough quarter. And so now the pressure is kind of on from all sides, it feels like, and it's a rough situation.
And honestly, a big part of why this store has seen a decline in patronage is management there.
Yeah.
The community largely does not care for the way the place is run. There's really high turnover in middle management, and they're not protected by our union contract. The structure there simply doesn't work. The top-down structure with the different layers. At one point when I was on overnight shift, I had 4 bosses. It was weird. It doesn't function properly as a business even. So, but the current management is so married to the structure that they've come up with that they refuse to compromise, maybe shift things around a little bit. Shit, they're hiring now for a position that this position that just assistant manager that just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense as a position, but when I asked before, why don't we replace this with something, different, offer them an alternative to that, they're like, well, if I were to do that, that person wouldn't have authority to discipline staff. And there's an obsession with discipline in the current management structure there that's antithetical to a cooperative work environment.
Yeah.
And also is hindering the place as a business. Like the place is bleeding money right now.
Like another thing I'll add to what Will's saying is that like the current GM, like as a personality, just seems very convinced of the fact that they definitively know the best course of action for the minutia of each department, and like doesn't seem to trust the department managers and the workers to make decisions that set their own departments up for success. There are things that happen in my department, like the insistence on over ordering certain produce items, which from experience and from sales patterns, we know how to do. Like we just figured out, this is a silly example, but like we just figured out how to rotate our avocados and how to order our avocados on a pattern that makes sense, because a lot of them were going bad before. And now they're saying, y'all gotta order more. Y'all, and like, you know, I know, like I see these orders come in and I can predict how many boxes of things are going to go bad. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you, like, I've predicted with like, there are some weeks where I predict with like 100% accuracy. And yet, like, you know, we're just like, there's just no horizontal, you know, even with things like that, like with like the logistics of this like minutia, mm-hmm. It would be helpful if everyone was listened to, and you could put everyone's brains together and sort of, you know, make a more efficient and just, you know, structure with a lot more investment and buy-in from everyone, if everyone feels listened to, you know.
Yeah, you're on the ground floor. You know what you're doing. You know when these avocados are going to go bad.
Right. It doesn't take, like, I don't need a fucking master's degree in avocados to notice these patterns. Like,
why? Something I was reading recently, it was an old IWW pamphlet. And
it's a good start.
About how the night shift always runs the most smoothly. And I worked the night shift there for a while because there are fewer white shirts, management types involved. And just like the lack of trust in the people who actually are on the ground floor, running the place, keeping the place open, making sure we have, you know, rice on the shelf and beans, and making sure people can keep their asses wiped during the pandemic. The distrust in us to know what's good for the place is it's harming the place as a business and as an asset to the community. There are a lot of people in the community who I speak with who say they don't shop there anymore because they can't find what they need. And a big part of that is it's been turnover in middle management who do a lot of the ordering, bringing people in who don't understand the community. Our GM proudly said that they aren't involved in any social scenes in West Philly. Which
they ain't from the area,
right? They're not from here, which a lot of us aren't, but they seem to wear that as a badge of honor that they don't understand the community that they run a grocery store in. So like our struggle right now is like really to keep the place open, because a lot of us believe that this deafness upstairs to what we know downstairs is hurting the place. And I believe, and a lot of us do believe, that the place isn't going to get better until there's a change of management there and we can reopen under new management.
Yeah.
And one that listens to the people who work there. And by and large, our membership agrees with that. And we're going to find out how much they agree with that in the upcoming board elections.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that's become clear to me, like, after, like, a year of being a steward there. Like, I mean, like, the level of distrust between union staff and upper management specifically, because some of the middle managers are good and do have people's trust, but
you got to stop spending 30 minutes on the toilet, Mike. That's what it is.
I know.
It was 20 minutes, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, just gotta stop. Gotta stop.
Right.
Being such a shabby cat.
But when you said it was like a mini Whole Foods, this is like what you have been said in the last 10 minutes. That is a perfect, accurate assessment of like what I would think a mini Whole Foods would be.
Yeah, tell me about it.
It just sounds like it's just increasingly corporate. It sounds like it's getting.
Oh, I was going to say, my sister worked at the Whole Foods up near the art museum even before the Amazon takeover, and I think she got fired for being 1 minute late twice.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
I lived in the Pacific Northwest for a long time, so I have a lot of friends who worked for Mr. Bezos over the years, and just the corporate culture of like backstabbing and like throat slitting there. I don't know anybody who still works there, but that was the impression I got from that is that you're supposed to be in constant competition with your coworkers to
And I will say we have successfully blocked a lot of, like a policy, an attendance policy that wasn't, it wasn't 1 minute late twice and you're fired, but it would have gotten a lot of people fired if it was instituted. And it was definitely more abusive, and our union and our labor management committee has been definitely helpful with helping us improve those kind of policies and block them if need be.
Yes, the elections coming up.
Right.
The board elections. Yes. So the co-op, like I said, is governed by a board, and those people are elected in 3-year terms. And there has not been, I believe, anybody sympathetic even to, well, that's not necessarily true. There have been some sympathetic people on the board, but nobody willing to take a lot of action on behalf of the people who work there on the board since I've worked there. So our goal is to get some seats in our hands. People who work there, people who are sympathetic to us in the community, and people who are opposed, people of good conscience who are opposed to the way the place is run, that has become increasingly abusive over the years. A few years ago, there was an effort to oust the current CEO, who was interim general manager at the time.
Yeah, 2018.
Which the board ignored. Yeah. And currently we are issuing statements to the board about the current abuses happening there, to influence the board to kind of do the right thing. Like we've openly called for the general manager CEO to be removed.
Yeah.
So we're not going anywhere we haven't gone already.
Yeah.
With this.
Yeah.
And
it's come to a head, really.
Right. So we intend to create a board there that will, do the right thing for the people who work there and also the people in the community who depend on the place.
What has been the response from the membership and community to you guys kind of pushing for, or pushing beyond just union recognition, but some actual say in how everything is managed?
Sure. So at the end of our contract negotiations, we had almost reached a stalemate, I thought.
That's right. Yes.
And we solicited comments from Mariposa's members to be sent directly to the at the time convener of the board and our general manager, letting them know they need to finish this contract up. And we got our contract finished the day after people sent their messages and emails. And that was a week of organizing we did for that. It was very, very little time.
Yeah.
Our membership there's a lot of community activists. There's a lot of people with networks of people who care a lot about the neighborhood. And they got it done very quickly.
Yeah. Like Will and I have both lived in this neighborhood for a while. And, we known a lot of member owners of the co-op for a while. And, a lot of previous workers and, managers at the co-op also have a lot of feelings about the current management because a lot of them left under the current management. So there was that too. And all the networks connected to those people. And our contract, I think we had a session the very next day and then our contract was done. So,
yep.
So there is a lot of support to answer your question because, everything is embedded. Like we're not like the workers there aren't separate from the members and aren't separate from community members. And like, it's, Philly, Philly is a city of a lot of small villages or small neighborhoods. And I think, there's a lot of overlap and social networks that overlap, and everything's very enmeshed. Like I have a few housemates that are members. So it's sort of like people know what's going to happen. Like there can't be a CEO of a community grocery store here that is able to cover up abuses, because it's always going to be able to get out, and people are, thankfully willing to get up in arms about it. We're willing to hold our businesses accountable here.
And and they've seen the community's response so far, and I think they do feel threatened by it. There's been a ratcheting up of tactics recently since we started speaking out more about what's going on there. I'm sure I'll hear about this podcast. It's at some point,
right?
Like the article we did in the Partisan that got back to management. So the place is very image conscious, and we're not going to allow them to keep this squeaky clean. We love the community. We're in it for the community image that they try to cultivate. If they don't live up to it, and if they don't like if they're going to try and come up with like a social media policy or something like that in response to that, like they'll have to answer in the community.
That ain't gonna fly. Yeah. Like, this is a co-op, it's in the middle of a gentrifying, largely Black and brown community, largely working class community. And like a lot of that community works there, and a lot of that community can't even afford to shop there. And, it's like, if you're claiming to be a social justice oriented business, you got to answer to that at some point. Like, you really got to make good on that. Capitalism's rough, and I know the big fish eat the small fish. But like, look, like we can't be paying some people high salaries and like, other people a lot less. And like, I just, if we're not doing this horizontally, I just don't know why we're even claiming to be a social justice oriented business. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, definitely. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've kind of seen broadly across both, I guess, like more mission driven places, that a lot of the resistance to worker organizing isn't even around like pay and whatnot, because there's not necessarily a like direct profit motive to fight worker power, but it's just about wanting to maintain that control.
Yes, I think that's definitely a thing
for sure.
Because I think I don't know, but I think that like there, I can't enter the mind of somebody else, but I feel like I've seen a lot of decisions be made there which feel like moves just for power. Like for instance, like hiring of certain managers who they feel like would be on their side, or like building, coalitions, like even at the expense of like, qualified candidates, or like, having, meetings at the expense of time on the floor, or like whatever it is. Like, I just think there's a lot of things that happen that are power driven more than profit driven. And I think the two often coincide, but I think that power over is very sadly and very unfortunately like a motivator in capitalism and in our current system that is just sad to see, because like what we want to see is collaborative power out of love and support for each other. I mean,
well, that's what we want
in
to
the
see.
Local food co-op.
Yeah, no, definitely. So it's, and, thinking about, our support of, this place has made statements against the cops before, which is great, because the Philly cops have been extremely abusive to Black and brown and working class communities in this city. And, there's a lot of like support for like, like I started working there because it seemed like a really trans friendly place to work, and they will respect my pronouns, but not always my, right to make a living that I could support myself off of. And that's kind of the problem with it. It's like,
yeah, that's that what you were talking about, like that PR. It's like, it's very just on the surface. They'll respect your pronouns, but yeah, they definitely won't pay you a living wage.
right. Or like respect for the environment. But
Yeah, and I feel like there's like a lot of bullshit with that when it comes to, as you were talking about, co-ops, and I also work in a nonprofit. It's very that surface level. We're real nice fellas, but deep down, it really just gets down to the meat of it. It's money.
yeah, like that stuff has to be backed up with like sweat and work and dollars and cents. And, again, that's hard, but it's something that I hope we can get down to the work of doing there.
Yeah, it's the workers who make everything work.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there should be a book written about that, but
Yeah.
There might have been a couple.
Tell me more. Yeah.
I'm sure it would get good marks, Gabe.
oh,
Oh, whoa. Yeah.
all right. Well,
Yeah, it sounds like you are fighting the good fight, and especially for all those people who like avocados, good ripe avocados, and
I
those.
can't believe I brought up the avocados.
And all those workers,
Avocados too, though. Yeah.
and all those workers with IBS, I'm sure they appreciate you fighting for them.
Well,
Yeah.
and also with egg prices the way they are these days, avocados are a good egg substitute for bacon.
Ah, okay.
that's true.
Well, the community thanks you. Well, they should at least.
And people do. Like we have a lot of
They
people
do.
who and it wasn't like, during lockdown I got a lot of like thank you for your service, like, Iraq war flashbacks kind of stuff.
Yeah,
But
I got those two at Target.
oh God, yeah. Yeah. I mean, we didn't do anything cheesy like
We can
something
be
like-
heroes just for one year.
No, I saw that. I don't know if that was Target or Whole Foods or something where they made people wear T-shirts that said, or they had a banner up that said like "Heroes work here" or some shit like that.
That
We
was
didn't do
everywhere.
anything corny like that, and people did like buy us lunch and stuff like that. That was cool. But no, I feel like the community support here has been really uplifting, especially during some of the darker times.
Absolutely.
There was like during our contract negotiations when we get bogged down, like last winter when we seemed like we were at an impasse, and also there was a dispute over wages and whether or not they had to give us raises during our contract talks, which we won through community support. Yeah, the community has been a big part of keeping things going at times where I felt like, holy shit, I can't take any more of this. People around the neighborhood have been really great about keeping us in it. Yeah,
Great.
And, letting us know that we are appreciated. We do valuable work, which every working person should understand that.
Yeah.
We're what keeps society chugging along.
And that
Yeah.
there are no jobs that are like, that should be looked down upon or looked as lesser than, or like looked as like, like
Maybe
even,
CEO of a co-op
yeah. Right.
or CEO of anything in general.
But no jobs that like keep shit running.
Right. CEO is of I have no problem looking down on that. Like,
Yes. Or like landlord or some shit like that.
Yeah.
Cop.
So there are jobs that should be looked down upon.
Yes.
But the productive ones should not be.
No.
We should all have a workplace where we should feel entitled to dignity and respect for basically trading our lives in to keep things moving.
Yeah.
Toilet paper on the shelves for people, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
No! Stop with the flashbacks, please.
Sorry about
Please.
that.
I mean, were you called essential workers as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the thoughts and prayers of like employment.
Exactly.
There was something, I don't know if it was a little tidbit they were pushing, before the 2020 election, Chuck Schumer said that he wanted to push a bill to give a $24,000 check to anyone who is considered an essential worker who worked through the entire co-op the entire pandemic. I don't know if anyone else remembers that, but I'm still waiting for my $24,000 from that asshole.
Me too.
It was, oh yeah, vote for us and we'll get you paid.
Oh yeah.
I'm still waiting for my $2,000 from Biden.
Oh my god.
Oh, you never got that?
Jeez.
Well, we got $1,400.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
He paid off your
$2,000.
college tuition, Gabe.
Right.
Yeah,
That's what happened.
Oh yeah.
Jeez. It ain't right.
Well, let's revert this back into a good ending.
Sure.
I will say that a word I used in the beginning of this episode, refreshing. It's refreshing to hear this, that you two and everybody you're working with is once again fighting a good fight, and it looks like you're getting there piecemeal, piece by piece, but you're getting there. It sounds like.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, I think something key to this is like a lot of mutual support and camaraderie, even with the stupid shit, like helping someone unload something or hearing someone out about a rough day they had. Like, these are really the building blocks to creating something that really feels like, an actual family at your job and not just a
Pizza party.
And not just a pizza party. Not that there are never family feuds or nothing like that, but I think we do work in a really good, mutually supportive environment. And that's really, that's what made me want to be a union steward, was just like, wow, I really like all these people, and we all deserve human dignity. And
right. Like one of the things when we did our stewards training, after our contract was ratified, they had a section in our steward training for how to deal with it if you have to represent someone that you fucking hate. And both of us in that training were like, well, we don't have to deal with that because we like all our coworkers. We have a wonderful group of people we work with, and we're all fighting together to, make a better life, a better place to work for all of us.
so,
And
that's awesome.
and a side note, the building it's a beautiful bank building. It's very imposing.
It's gorgeous. Yeah.
It's
like a
it
Gilded
really
Age
is pretty.
bank building. It's great. It's not the most practical workplace, I got to tell you. Old buildings like that, it's actually kind of a hindrance to getting the job done a lot of the time.
One wonders the updates that it's had since the Gilded Age.
But I do love working. Like, sometimes I can just stand on the floor and stare up at the ceiling, except for the part that's all water damaged, and see the architecture up in there. It's really cool. I do like working in there, even when I hate having to go down to the basement to pick up back stock.
It might or might not be haunted.
It's definitely haunted.
Find me a building in Philly that isn't.
All right, Gabe, do you have any more hard-hitting questions?
I don't. I just want to say thank you and solidarity, and wish you the best of luck with the election.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, thanks very much for having us on.
All right.
Yeah, just thanks for having us again. Thanks for the solidarity and just letting us tell our story. And it was nice talking to y'all.
It was our pleasure.
And as the self-appointed official gatekeepers of Philadelphia's labor history, welcome to the annals. You've officially been inducted. So
welcome to the what?
We are now part of the annals.
Dave, never say that again.